Hello friends and welcome to Jocelyn's Twilight Years, how to be a really old model. It's just before Christmas, so I'm wearing my Christmas onesie. I'm about to go off on my final tour of the year, which amusingly involves me going to exactly the same places that I went to on my second to last tour of the year, because I am very optimistic about the size of our country. I tend to imagine it's tiny when I'm planning tours, and as a result I spend a lot of time driving. Today, shout out to my friend Katie Maguire, who asked me how I chose my modelling name. And I'm going to tell you. Hello, Katie. If I could go back in time and start my career again, there are not many things I would change. I have enjoyed my career immensely, and I don't think I've made too many serious errors in that time. But one slightly serious error I made at the beginning of my career was to do my work under my real name. If I knew what I know now, I would have picked a fake name and stuck with it, made that my entire brand. But what I did instead was I started off modelling under my real name, which is Jocelyn, because at the time I was a mainstream actress and I was acting under my real name. So I thought modelling was going to be a very small subsidiary part of my career, so I kept my name. It wasn't until I did my first bondage modelling shoot that someone said to me, "What do you want your name to be? If you're going to be a fetish model, you will get crazy fans stalking you if you use your real name. Choose a stage one." That, in fact, has not turned out to be true, because I think a large proportion of my fans know my real name, and so far, no stalkers. I'm very tall. I think I put stalkers off. Very tall, very loud. I realised I could choose anything. So what I chose was Arielle Anderson. The reason for my choice was a little complicated. One, I chose Ariel as a first name because when I was a mainstream actress, I was cast as Ariel in Shakespeare's The Tempest. The Tempest is about an old magician called Prospero who has a slave called Ariel. I played Ariel, therefore it was the first time in my career stroke life that I got to play at being a slave, and I found it very hot. I did a 6-week run of this in a theatre in London, being Ariel every night. And although Prospero in this particular production was being played by a girl, boo, I'm heterosexual, it was still so amazing being Ariel the slave. So clearly I wanted to be Ariel, but after being Ariel the fetish model for a few months, I realised people wanted a surname, especially when I started working in the USA, so I decided on Andersen. Sometimes people think I'm Scandinavian, so I decided to have a surname that sounded Scandinavian, and I wanted to be able to say Andersen. Is that a Scandinavian accent? Probably not. I've never been very good at accents, which is why I started modelling rather than acting in the end. Anyway, but also because of Hans Christian Andersen, who wrote lovely fairy tales, lovely but very grim fairy tales, including The Little Mermaid, who gets to be a human, but every step is like treading on broken glass or something. I can't really remember, but that seemed supremely masochistic and splendid, so, and she's clearly Ariel. Oh my god, Ariel the Mermaid, written by Hans Christian Andersen. I just made that connection. I wish I'd been smart enough to do that myself. Oh well, I didn't. Anyway, Andersen seemed like an excellent surname for a model who specialised in being a professional victim, as I do. So, I loved being Arielle Anderson very much, and I wished that I'd done all my modelling under that name, because it became very confusing with fans not knowing that Jocelyn was also Ariel, so they couldn't find my work very easily. And then, just to make things more complicated for myself, after about 3 years as a art nude and fetish model, I realised that my life would not be complete if I didn't do spanking shoots as well. So I suddenly found myself in this position of going into a genre that I thought would probably make a lot of mainstream photographers not want to work with me anymore, because I think that the spanking world does have more of a taboo associated with it than the bondage photography world. Don't know why. So I thought I should maybe have a different name so as to make it a little bit harder for people to realise that Jocelyn also was a spanking model. It felt quite important to me that people who book me Jocelyn or me, Ariel, don't just de facto get to spank me. I like to think that as a spanking model, I remain an amateur. I don't provide a professional, reliable experience. I just work with the people I want to on the projects I want to. My spanking persona isn't for hire as easily as my Jocelyn and Ariel personas. Also, I realised that a lot of spanking stories are kind of real world based, whereas bondage stuff is often quite fantasy world like. A lot of spanking films are based in schools and institutions. So I thought I needed a much more real life sounding name. I decided to be Amelia Jane, based on a series of books by Enid Blyton, who was, of course, one of my favourite authors when I was a child, because she was kind of the only children's author who was really prolific back in the dim, distant past. I grew up in the 80s. There were other books around, I'm sure, but the ones I had access to were Enid Blyton. Why? I don't know. Ask my parents. There were lots of copies of Enid Blyton books and lots of copies of Nature in my family. I didn't read Nature. Very, very dull science magazine. Sometimes my Lego men used to walk on my dad's Nature magazines. So, one of Enid Blyton's books was about a big naughty doll called Amelia Jane, who the Teddy was often having to be quite stern with. She was always getting into trouble, and one of the books was called... Yes. This copy was bought for me by Wicked Dave and Clover, my kinky friends. I love them. So I wanted to be Amelia Jane, but then I was stuck needing a surname, and this is where I got rather vicious and nasty, let me tell you. I chose my surname in revenge upon someone. Now, this revenge is entirely meaningless because this person does not know and will not ever know that I did this. But nevertheless, I grew up as a Jehovah's Witness until I was 13 years old. And I have many things to say about that religion, and I think it is a force for very bad things. I grew up believing Armageddon was just around the corner and that in fact I would never reach adulthood. It meant I did no work at school because I thought I wouldn't need it because I'd never grow up. So, when I chose a surname, I decided to choose the surname of the president of the Jehovah's Witness organisation, President Rutherford. Ha 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 ha! Every time someone barks Rutherford at me in a spanking film, it makes me extremely happy because I don't feel like I'm being punished, I feel like he is being punished. So that's how I chose my names. So now I am known as Jocelyn, Arielle Anderson and Amelia Jane Rutherford. It's extremely confusing. I get confused. I wish I could go back, start all over again. Maybe I'd have done it all as Amelia Jane Rutherford because that would have been a very good revenge on President Rutherford of the Jehovah's Witnesses. Why can't I just be normal? Answers below, please. Thank you. This was Psychological. I'll be back with more bants very shortly. By which I mean in a month. Happy Christmas, everyone. Thank you for sticking with me. I'm going to try to edit this down to less than 10 minutes. President Rutherford, you made a spanking model.